€350 million is on the table, and suddenly the future of Lamine Yamal feels uncertain. Barcelona could be on the verge of losing their brightest star to Paris, a move that would send shockwaves through European football. At the same time, questions are beginning to swirl around Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. Is one of the Premier League's most dominant partnerships finally approaching its end? Meanwhile, Manchester United appear to have struck again in the transfer market, quietly swooping in to snatch one of the Bundesliga's top defenders right under their rivals' noses. And over in North London, the Zerbi is wasting no time stamping his authority at Spurs, with his first major signing already secured. It's shaping up to be another chaotic window, packed with drama at every turn. Morgan Rogers, meanwhile, is turning into a textbook example of smart recruitment done right. Once unable to meet the relentless demands at Manchester City, he reset his career at Middlesbrough before Aston Villa picked him up for a modest £8 million in the summer of 2024. Fast forward to now, and that fee looks like a bargain of the highest order. With 17 goals in 44 appearances this season, a regular role under Tuchel with England, and a central role in Unai Emery's system, Rodgers has rapidly evolved into one of the most valuable players in the league. Reports now suggest he may have outgrown Villa, with a potential exit on the horizon this summer. Aston Villa are not known for letting their best players leave without resistance, but financial realities may force their hand. Selling Rodgers for $80 million, or even pushing towards a record-breaking $100 million, wouldn't just be good business, it might be essential. Naturally, interest is building fast. Chelsea are eager to slot him into their ever-expanding recruitment project, especially with uncertainty surrounding Enzo Fernandez's future and the need for consistent midfield output. Liverpool are also circling, particularly as they scramble to replace the creative void left by Mohamed Salah. Rodgers may not replicate Salah's impact, but he offers a genuine goal threat, something Liverpool can't afford to lack. Then there's Manchester United, ready to offer him a leading role in yet another rebuild. But that proposition comes with risk, because Rodgers is at a stage where he wants immediate success, not a long-term project. So the question becomes clear: who actually secures his signature? A structured, title-chasing side like Liverpool, or the unpredictable, ever-evolving project at Chelsea? It's a decision that could define the next phase of his career. Every transfer window, however, starts with the same fundamental truth: if your defense is unstable, no amount of attacking brilliance will save you. That reality is currently staring Manchester United in the face. According to reports, Nico Schlotterbeck has emerged as a serious target for INEOS, and what makes this situation particularly interesting is the price. With just 1 year left on his contract and no clear commitment to stay, a fee in the region of 30 to 35 million looks almost suspiciously affordable in today's market, especially for a left-sided centre-back capable of anchoring an entire system rather than merely patching holes. United's sudden interest is hardly surprising. Their defensive line this season has been anything but settled. Lisandro Martinez has once again shown his quality but struggled with availability. De Ligt has drifted in and out, and young Yoro has been forced to mature faster than expected. Even Harry Maguire has found himself pulled back into the spotlight. At this point, it's no longer a run of bad luck, it's a structural flaw that needs urgent attention. Beyond just depth, the squad lacks balance, particularly on the left side of defense. Schlotterbeck offers exactly what they're missing: a natural left footer, comfortable in possession, capable of stepping into midfield, and composed under pressure. These are no longer luxury attributes for a modern centre-back, they are essential. Of course, the lingering concern is familiar. Promising signings often look perfect on paper before being swallowed by the chaos that has defined United's dressing room in recent years. If the club is serious about building a stable, cohesive defensive line rather than applying yet another temporary fix, this is a move that makes complete sense. The real question for Manchester United isn't just whether they can sign Nico Schlotterbeck, it's whether they actually have a clear plan for him. Is there a defined role waiting, or is this another case of hoping things somehow fall into place later? That uncertainty has become a recurring theme at Old Trafford, where recruitment often feels reactive rather than part of a long-term structure. Over at Tottenham Hotspur, the situation is far more urgent. Sitting just 1 point above the relegation zone, a club with elite facilities now finds itself locked in a brutal fight for survival. The appointment of Roberto De Zerbi is meant to stabilize the chaos, but his intricate, possession-based system demands intelligent, technically capable players, not a squad currently struggling to meet even the basics. That's why reports linking Spurs with Goncalo Ramos carry real weight. Paris Saint-Germain invested heavily in Ramos back in 2023, but like many expensive signings in Paris, he has spent more time watching from the sidelines than influencing matches. With 2 years left on his contract, the striker is eager for a fresh start, somewhere he can actually play. For Tottenham, the logic behind pursuing him is straightforward. Their attack has completely lost its edge. Dominic Solanke, who once looked like a breakthrough success, has seen his momentum collapse due to injuries and inconsistency, leaving the frontline blunt and unreliable. This isn't a luxury signing, it's a necessity. De Zerbi needs a striker who can both finish chances and understand the tactical demands of a possession-heavy system. Ramos offers that blend of clinical finishing and intelligent movement. From a broader perspective, the move makes sense for all parties involved. PSG recover part of their investment, the player gets regular minutes, and Spurs gain a vital piece in their fight to avoid relegation. The only lingering doubt is whether Ramos himself is willing to trade the comfort of Paris for the intensity of a relegation battle in the Premier League. Meanwhile, at Manchester City, everything appears to be on hold, all because of one man. Pep Guardiola has reportedly paused any discussions about his future until May, despite having just 1 year left on his contract. The club's leadership has chosen not to pressure him, allowing the situation to unfold on his terms. It's an unusual dynamic, one of the wealthiest and most powerful clubs in football effectively handing control to its manager, waiting for him to decide when, or if, he wants to step away. Behind the calm exterior, there is a clear understanding of what's at stake. Guardiola's departure wouldn't just mean a new manager, it would shake the very foundation of everything Manchester City have built over the past decade. That's why incoming sporting director Hugo Viana is quietly preparing for the possibility, compiling a short list of potential successors. Interestingly, the names being considered, Enzo Maresca, Xabi Alonso, and Vincent Kompany, all share a connection to Guardiola. Rather than reinventing themselves, City seem intent on preserving his philosophy, searching for someone who can continue the same footballing identity. Guardiola himself appears determined to let results guide his decision. Another successful season could reignite his motivation to stay, or it could provide the perfect ending to an already historic chapter. For now, City's hierarchy projects come confidence, but the underlying question remains, can this finely tuned machine function without the man who designed it, or has everything become too dependent on a single figure? At the same time, Paris Saint-Germain are once again preparing to make headlines in the transfer market. Under the leadership of Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the club is reportedly targeting Barcelona's most valuable asset, Lamine Yamal. A potential offer of €350 million would not only test Barcelona's resolve but also shatter the existing world transfer record set by Neymar. Yamal's market value is already astronomical, but PSG's strategy is clear: overwhelm Barcelona with a fee so large it becomes impossible to ignore. From a romantic perspective, selling a generational talent who represents the future of the club feels unthinkable. Yet modern football is often dictated by financial realities, and offers of this magnitude have a way of forcing even the most principled clubs into difficult decisions. Lamine Yamal is no ordinary talent. He dictates matches with a level of authority that belies his age, and right now, he carries the label of the most valuable footballer on the planet. But beyond the brilliance on the pitch lies a far harsher reality. Barcelona's financial situation remains fragile, and an offer of this magnitude, €350 million, is not something that comes around twice. It's the kind of bid that could instantly erase debt and finance the construction of an entirely new squad. From a purely economic standpoint, it's not just tempting, it's transformative. Of course, football is never just about numbers. Loyalty, identity, and emotion all come into play, at least until a check with that many zeros lands on the table. Fans often assume that a generational talent like Yamal will continue on a perfect upward trajectory, but the game doesn't operate on fairy tales. One serious injury or a prolonged dip in form can dramatically shift perception and value. That's the uncomfortable reality decision-makers must confront. Clubs don't just sell players, they manage risk. And history has already shown how quickly sentiment can collapse under financial pressure. Neymar once embodied Barcelona's future, professing loyalty and passion, until a record-breaking offer changed everything overnight. This is the dilemma Barcelona now face: hold on to a potential icon and gamble on his continued rise, or cash in at the absolute peak of his market value. It's a brutal choice between emotion and pragmatism, and there's no guarantee either path leads to success. Meanwhile, at the Etihad, Manchester City are dealing with a different kind of uncertainty. The club is working urgently to secure Rodri's future amid growing interest from Real Madrid. A new contract has been placed in front of him, one that would reaffirm his status as the world's premier defensive midfielder. The message from the club is clear: either commit now or risk being sold for a massive fee this summer. Allowing him to run down his contract and leave for free in 2027 would be a catastrophic failure of planning. Speculation has linked Rodri's recent dip in form to distractions surrounding a possible move to Spain, but the reality is far more physical than psychological. A serious knee injury in September 2024 followed by a demanding return has taken its toll. Approaching 30, he is no longer operating with the same limitless energy. Yet the expectations haven't changed. If anything, the system still demands even more from him, which only accelerates the strain. It's no surprise that fatigue is becoming increasingly visible. To address this imbalance, City have reportedly turned their attention to Elliot Anderson of Nottingham Forest. The idea is simple: bring in a younger, dynamic midfielder capable of covering ground, handling defensive responsibilities, and easing the burden on Rodri. It's a logical adjustment, but it doesn't solve the central issue. The final decision rests entirely with Rodri himself. And when personal preferences, family considerations, and lifestyle factors enter the equation, even the most carefully structured football plans can quickly lose control. The question now is whether Manchester City can convince him to stay, or whether this signals the beginning of the end of his Premier League journey. Elsewhere, Everton are exploring what some are calling a potential redemption story. Reports suggest the club is considering a permanent move for Jack Grealish following his loan spell. There's been plenty of praise for his renewed freedom and creativity, but the raw statistics, 2 goals and 6 assists in 22 appearances, tell a more restrained story. Encouraging, perhaps, but not spectacular. Then comes the financial reality. The agreed purchase option sits at £50 million, a figure that looks wildly inflated for a player entering the final year of his contract. Everton's hierarchy are understandably reluctant to meet that valuation and are instead pushing to negotiate a far lower fee, closer to £20 million. It's a classic standoff between perceived value and actual output, and one that will ultimately determine whether this revival story turns into a permanent chapter or fades away as a temporary resurgence. The biggest obstacle in Everton's pursuit of Jack Grealish isn't the transfer fee, it's his staggering wages. At around £300,000 a week, committing to that kind of salary would put enormous strain on the club's financial structure. Even with the added revenue expected from their new Hill Dickinson Stadium, absorbing such a contract could effectively paralyze their ability to strengthen other areas of the squad. It's not just a signing, it's a decision that could shape their entire transfer strategy. So why did Everton step into this situation in the first place? The answer lies in how well Grealish has fit into David Moyes' system. His more direct, pragmatic style has allowed the player to rediscover his natural instincts, free from the rigid positional demands he faced under Pep Guardiola. As a result, Grealish has begun to look like a genuinely impactful player again. Even when a stress fracture in January threatened to derail his loan spell, he chose to remain at Everton's training ground to complete his rehabilitation, a gesture that hasn't gone unnoticed by the club's hierarchy. Now, Everton's board faces a delicate balancing act. On one hand, Grealish clearly improves their ability to control and progress the ball. On the other, his injury history and enormous wages make him a significant financial risk. The outcome hinges on whether Manchester City are willing to lower their demands. If not, Everton may be forced to walk away from a player who fits perfectly on the pitch, simply to preserve stability of it. Meanwhile, Barcelona are attempting to operate in the transfer market under severe financial constraints. Their reported move for Alessandro Bastoni highlights that struggle perfectly. An opening offer of €45 million was quickly dismissed by Inter Milan, who see the defender as a fundamental piece of their system. From Inter's perspective, there is no urgency to sell, and certainly not at a discounted price. Their stance is firm: any deal would require a fee in the region of €60 to €70 million. Barcelona have tried to make the move more appealing to the player by offering improved personal terms, reportedly increasing his salary from €5.5 million to around €7 million per year. For Bastoni, the proposition is understandably attractive. A move to a club of Barcelona's stature, combined with a salary boost and a fresh start after a difficult spell in Italy, presents a compelling opportunity. However, the reality of the situation comes down to finances. The gap between Barcelona's offer and Inter's valuation remains significant, at least €15 million. For a club already navigating economic limitations, that difference is substantial. Any progress on this deal will likely depend on Barcelona generating funds through player sales first. Without that, even serious interest may not be enough to close the deal. Ultimately, the situation reflects Barcelona's broader challenge, trying to compete at the highest level in the transfer market while operating with limited resources. Whether Inter soften their stance or Barcelona find a way to raise the necessary funds will determine if this move becomes a reality, or just another missed opportunity.